Thank you.
All right, let's talk about this temporary immigrant and refugee ban with our panel. Joining me now, Selena Zito is a CNN contributor, a reporter for the Washington Examiner, and a columnist for the New York Post. Also with me, a CNN political commentator, Ryan Lizza, who is also a Washington correspondent for the New Yorker. Nick Robertson, CNN international diplomatic editor. And with me here in studio is Pate, who is a criminal defense attorney and a constitutional attorney. All right, good to see all of you.
Hey, Fred.
All right, Selena, let me begin with you. We're hearing all kinds of words such as, it's ineffective, it is dangerous, it is deplorable. What are you hearing from people in your reporting on the potential consequences of this executive order?
Well, this morning I went out and talked to people. A lot of what people said, that they were people that voted for him had this sort of wait and see attitude to see exactly what it means. They're not quite sure they understand what the scope of the executive order is. So they have more of a wait and see kind of attitude. What is interesting to me was when I talked to people that supported Clinton or Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, they're mad at us because they think that our profession has created so much noise that they don't understand what they should be worried and what is outrage and what is not. So that's the sort of commentary I got today across the Ohio and Pennsylvania area.
And so, Ryan, these lawsuits now, I mean, so far about 3 that we've talked about specifically on our air this morning, calling this ban unconstitutional, also calling the practices of detainment unconstitutional. How, if at all, would this impact President Trump politically, particularly as members of Congress will now look at whether he overextended himself by not consulting with Congress in now 14 executive orders in 1 week in office?
Yeah, and look, I think it's important to distinguish between the different executive orders. Some of the executive orders, frankly, are more like a press release, a statement of Trump's budgetary and legislative priorities. They don't have much impact. For instance, the Obamacare executive order, I think most experts agree there's not a big impact there. Even the accompanying executive order yesterday about the military, it was basically a statement of principles, a statement of where he wants to take defense policy, but it didn't have any teeth. But
this one consequential.
This very, very extremely consequential, probably the most consequential one so far. And from the legal community I've seen so far, it does seem that he has very broad discretion in this area as president. It's not like the other issues where he needs congressional approval. So if Congress really finds this as offensive as a lot of people do, then it's going to take the House and the Senate, the leadership, Republican leadership in the House and Senate speaking up about this. Remember, Mike Pence during the campaign very famously said that a Muslim ban was, I'm paraphrasing, but he's...
I've got it right here. Let's bring up this tweet. This is from December 8th, and he says, Mike Pence, this as Vice President-elect, says, calls to ban Muslims from entering the U.S. are offensive and unconstitutional.
Yeah. And
now,
Paul
after
Ryan, of course,
swearing in,
similar.
is Mike Pence still feeling this way?
Well, he's. It seems like he's.
We haven't heard anything.
A lot of it, and obviously, there's going to be a debate about whether this is technically a Muslim ban or not. Right? There's certainly a religious test embedded in this executive order because it prioritizes one religion over another in terms of their where they are on the line in coming into the United States. So I think Republicans have to speak up on this. Those are the people who have the most credibility and can actually have some impact in Congress, to be totally frank.
Right. So officially unclear whether Vice President is in step with what the president's order is saying, even though in December 8th he said it was offensive and unconstitutional. Okay. So Nick, the U.S. needs allies around the world, whether it be battling ISIS, or simply to have some congruency on a number of things from trade and business, etc. This kind of executive order, in your view, how will that impact relations, particularly as it pertains to other Muslim nations?
Well, even at a more sort of fundamental level, where we talk about, the alliance and the similarities of views that exist between Europe and the United States, where pretty much we're all sort of on the same page, on the same track. I think this stretches that relationship a lot, because what it does is, on the one hand, it enables groups like ISIS in their propaganda message to say the United States is targeting Muslims. ISIS is a very strong and real threat in Europe, as are concerns here in the United States as well. But it goes beyond that. I mean, President Trump has made it very clear that he is ambivalent about the European Union and the strength of it, that he supports Brexit, and there are politicians in Europe at the moment, in countries like Holland, like France, like Germany, where there are elections this year, that absolutely take this current message that they see in this action. We hear from Geert Wilders today in Holland, elections there in 2 months. The most popular politician in Holland at the moment saying, I support this, banning Muslims. Those are his words, banning Muslims. I would go further and add other countries. So for the Europeans, they see actions like this as upsetting the European political order. They fear already President Trump is trying to, if you will, break up the European Union and have more countries like Britain leave the European Union, and enable nationalist, populist politicians like Geert Wilders, like Marine Le Pen in France. And this, for Europe, is a concern. So even at this level, where you have this very strong historic alliance, we talk about NATO, we talk about the meeting of minds between Europe and the United States, it begins to test that fundamental theory, that fundamental understanding. It's a big concern in Europe at the moment.
And then, Paige, you are seeing at least two avenues in which this executive order will be contested. Legal, constitutional. You've got members of Congress who may argue that the president has gone too far without consulting based on some precedent. And then you, of course, are seeing these lawsuits from attorneys who are saying people are being illegally detained.
That's right. Well, the first problem, and the more immediate problem, is you have people locked up based upon this executive order. And so the lawsuit that was filed this morning challenges their detention, saying basically you can't lock these folks up based only on the executive order. You have to show that they violated some law, and there's no evidence that they did. The second problem is the order itself. Is it constitutional to ban an entire group of people from a particular country, or a particular background, a particular religion? When Congress wrote the immigration laws, they put in a non-discriminatory provision saying, with some exceptions, you can't ban someone based upon their religion or their national origin or their race. If this executive order changes that, it's kind of rewriting the law, and that's something the president cannot do.
Okay. All right, to all of you, thank you so much. We're not done talking about this. This really is just the beginning. Selena Zito, Ryan Lizza, Nick Robertson, Paige Pate, appreciate it.
Thanks, Fred.
All right, coming up, President